A train pulls into the station, 4 seconds late. Someone on the platform actually looks down at their watch, annoyed. Now picture the opposite. A quiet Sunday afternoon. A man wants to mow his lawn. He doesn't, not because it's illegal, but because it's unthinkable. This is Switzerland. A country so wealthy it could buy almost anything, and yet most of its people don't even own their front door. 61% of Swiss households rent, not because they can't afford otherwise, but because ownership was never really the point. Underneath the postcard, the mountains, the chocolate, the trains that apologize for being seconds late, is a country running on rules nobody wrote down, and everybody still obeys. This isn't a story about a perfect country. It's a story about a country with no interest in perfect, because perfect has no problems. Switzerland is remarkable because of how it manages the ones it has. To understand Switzerland, you don't start with banks. You don't start with watches. You start with rock and ice. The Alps cover roughly 60% of the country. Not gentle hills, walls of stone and ice rising past 4,000 meters, snowbound most of the year. Above the village of Zermatt, the Matterhorn stands alone against the sky, a pyramid so precise it looks designed rather than formed. It isn't even the tallest peak in the country. Most Swiss people will live their entire lives without ever standing at the base of the one that is. Here's the part most people miss. Switzerland has no coastline. It isn't near an ocean, and yet it controls a huge share of Europe's fresh water. The country holds around 1,500 lakes and accounts for roughly 6% of Europe's entire freshwater reserve. Rivers born here, the Rhine, the Rhone, the Inn, leave Switzerland and go on to sustain a good part of the continent. Landlocked and somehow still the water tower of Europe. For the people who live in its shadow, the mountains aren't scenery, they're routine. Hiking is a national reflex, not a hobby. Over 65,000 kilometers of trails marked by the same bright yellow signposts telling you exactly how long the walk ahead will take, down to the minute. Skiing is something you learn the way you learn to walk. But there's one thing precision can't put on a schedule. The glaciers, the ones that built this entire water system, are retreating, fast. Ski villages are watching bare rock appear where ice used to be permanent. The mountains built Swiss discipline. Cold, isolation, and altitude forced a culture to get organized or die out. Now, for the first time, that same discipline is being tested by something it can't outschedule. Mornings here don't start with a rush. They start with coffee, fresh bread from the neighborhood bakery, and a small ritual most tourists never notice. A mid-morning pause called znuni, literally at 9. A coffee, a pastry, a moment to breathe before the day continues. Then there's the part that actually runs the country. The rules nobody writes down, because nobody has to. In apartment buildings, laundry isn't first come, first served, it's scheduled. Every resident gets an assigned day and time slot, and everyone respects it. Trash sorting isn't a chore, it's closer to a civic duty. glass separated by color, cardboard bundled and tied with string, batteries and coffee capsules collected in their own designated bins. Nobody's checking. Nobody has to. And then there's Sunday. Total silence. No lawnmowers, no hammers, no vacuum cleaners. It's not a law that's heavily enforced. It's a boundary everyone quietly agrees not to cross. Here's the stat that surprises people. In one of the richest countries on Earth, most people don't own their home. Over 60% of Swiss households rent, even wealthy families, because the goal was never a deed with your name on it. It was a stable, well-run community you could trust completely. Punctuality is the thread running through all of it. A train scheduled for 8:02 leaves at 8:02, not 8:03. Being late here isn't a scheduling issue. It's read as a small act of disrespect toward everyone else's time. None of this happens by accident. The quiet, the order, the trust. It's maintained, rebuilt every single day by millions of small decisions nobody talks about, because talking about it would almost defeat the point. Switzerland isn't quiet because nothing's happening. It's quiet because quiet is the thing everyone agreed to build. Ask anyone what Swiss food is, and you'll get the same two answers: fondue and chocolate. They're not wrong. A pot of melted cheese, shared bread, a table that doesn't empty for hours. Fondue isn't really a meal, it's a ritual. Raclette works the same way. A wheel of cheese melted and scraped over potatoes, pickles and onions, meant to be lingered over, not rushed through. But that's the postcard version. The everyday version looks different. It's muesli, invented here, eaten by actual Swiss people every single morning. Oats, fresh fruit, milk or yogurt. It's rosti, a pan-fried potato cake that shows up at breakfast and dinner alike. It's a sausage grilled outdoors, by the lake, not a 5-course dinner in an alpine chalet. Here's the thing worth noticing. Almost nothing on a Swiss table exists by accident. Rich, nutty cheese comes from specific high-altitude pastures. Dried, air-cured beef comes from a specific cold, dry mountain climate. Elaborate pastries trace back to old trading cities sitting at the crossroads of France, Germany, and Italy. Even the chocolate is a product of precision engineering as much as it is a treat. Every dish is basically a regional map you can eat. So when the Swiss sit down to a fondue pot, they're not just eating cheese, they're eating mountain grass, a specific herd, a specific summer at altitude, and a specific winter in the valley below it. It slows the whole evening down on purpose. Because here, that's the point. Refinement was never about the size of the plate. Sometimes it's just a slice of bread and 3 unhurried hours at the table. Switzerland isn't one culture wearing one flag. It's 4. In the German-speaking north, the majority, and home to cities like Zurich, there's a strange split most outsiders never notice. High German is what's written, taught in schools, used for anything formal. But the language of the actual home, the language people think and joke and argue in, is Swiss German. A set of dialects so different that native German speakers often can't follow them. Head west, and the whole rhythm changes. In Geneva and Lausanne, the pace slows, the food gets more French, the debate gets more spirited. Head south into Ticino, and it flips again. Stone houses, sun-drenched piazzas, a warmth that feels a world away from the north. And tucked into the mountains of Graubünden, fewer than 1% of the population still speaks Romansh, a language descended straight from spoken Latin. It's protected by law, taught in schools, passed down in villages where the same family names have appeared in church records for 500 years. So here's the actual question. What holds a country together when it doesn't even share a language? Not blood, not one flag, one anthem, one mother tongue. It's a shared set of values, direct democracy, neutrality, and an almost spiritual attachment to the same mountains, regardless of which language you use to describe them. You can hear it in the sound of the place itself. Yodeling wasn't invented for tourists. It was how herders called cattle and passed messages across valleys before anyone had a phone. The Alphorn did the same job. 4 voices, and somehow, none of them shouting over the others. Here's something that surprises most people. The Switzerland you're picturing right now is younger than the story it tells about itself. The founding myth points to 1291, a charter, an oath between valleys, the birth of a nation. Except the Swiss government's own records are clear on this. That document only became the official founding text in the late 1800s. Even the national holiday, August 1st, was set later deliberately to help build a shared identity for a country that didn't fully have one yet. Even ancient nations, it turns out, sometimes have to construct their own origin story. And the history underneath that story is a lot less peaceful than the postcard suggests. For centuries, Switzerland's biggest export wasn't watches or chocolate, it was soldiers. Swiss mercenaries fought across Europe, feared for their discipline. That past hasn't fully disappeared. It's still standing guard, literally, in the form of the Swiss Guard protecting the Pope at the Vatican. But that same violent history produced something almost opposite. After witnessing the horror of the Battle of Solferino, a Geneva businessman named Henry Dunant pushed for an international group to care for the wounded, no matter which side they fought for. That idea became the Red Cross. A country built by warriors invented the modern rules for wartime mercy. None of this comes free. Switzerland's cost of living is among the highest on Earth, and housing sits at the top of that list. In cities like Zurich and Geneva, rent alone can eat a huge share of even a strong salary. Health insurance is mandatory, private, and expensive. A fixed monthly cost every single resident carries, no exceptions. Groceries, eating out, everyday life, all of it demands careful math, even for people earning well above average. There's a quieter pressure too. The same standards that make Switzerland function, the punctuality, the cleanliness, the order, don't just apply to trains and streets, they apply to people. There's an unspoken expectation to keep up, to not be the one who's late, who's messy, who breaks the pattern. And then there's the harder truth. You can't buy your way into belonging here. Switzerland has one of the highest shares of foreign-born residents in Europe, over a quarter of the population. People move here, work hard, pay full taxes for decades, and many will still be quietly considered newcomers. Not out of hostility, Switzerland is safe, lawful, welcoming on paper. It's just that belonging isn't issued with a visa. It's earned slowly, sometimes across generations. Then there's tourism, pulling in two directions at once. Millions of visitors come every year for the exact same untouched landscapes that tourism itself puts under pressure. Should more ski lifts go up in pristine terrain? Should quiet villages host large commercial events to keep their economies alive? There's no clean answer, just an ongoing negotiation. And above all of it sits the one deadline nobody can push back. The glaciers are melting now, not someday. Ski villages are already watching bare rock appear earlier every year. So maybe the real question isn't why Switzerland is rich, clean, and always on time. The real question is how long a system this finely balanced can keep holding. When the ice is melting, the cities are getting more international, and the crowds keep growing. Switzerland was never paradise. It's an agreement, and agreements only work if you keep renewing them. That train pulling in 4 seconds late. That Sunday afternoon, silent, because everyone agreed it should be. Not because a law said so. Those mountains sitting on the horizon of every city, holding water for a continent that can't see the sea from here. None of that happened by accident. Somebody has to keep choosing it. Every laundry slot, every sorted bottle, every train that leaves on time, all over again, every single day. Freedom and order aren't actually enemies. They just need someone willing to draw the line between them and hold it. Everyone's chasing faster right now. Faster shipping, faster scrolling, faster everything. Switzerland picked a different speed. Not slow, exact. And somewhere in a valley in Graubünden, someone's grandfather is walking the same cattle up the same pasture his grandfather did in no hurry at all, because he's already exactly where he's supposed to be.